All right. We are at Politicon 2018. I'm KMO, and I am here with Sheril Kirshenbaum, who is a podcaster herself and an NPR host of a show called Serving Up Science. But here at Politicon, what are you doing?
So I am here with Science Debate. We're a C3, nonpartisan, and we simply ask candidates running for office to talk about science policy before Election Day. So the whole idea is that democracy works when people are well-informed, and we think we're all going to be a little more well-informed when we start hearing about issues like climate change, energy, food security, mental health, opioids, before Election Day as the expectation for every citizen, not the exception when we get real lucky that someone's willing to talk about them.
We have a lot of lawyers in Congress and in the Senate, not so many scientists. How do you talk to lawyers about science?
Well, look, I think most of us think back to our time in high school when, to be fair, a lot of people don't like science all that much. They get stuck in really long, boring lab periods.
Yeah.
But it's really about humanizing science stories, right? We all care for our loved ones who have cancer, who have Alzheimer's. We hopefully vaccinate our kids to protect them from the flu or polio or the measles. I think science policies should really help to make sure we have enough food to feed 9 billion people by 2050. They should make sure every citizen has access to clean and safe drinking water. And I live in Michigan now where so many people don't.
That is an issue.
Should dictate the way that we support and treat veterans when they return home from serving our country. They should help protect vulnerable populations in parts of the world that are at risk of going underwater, like Miami and New Orleans. There are so many issues that I think, we don't expect candidates to remember the fifth number in pi. We certainly don't need them to tell us anything.
I can't tell you what it is.
Right, but I do think they should be prepared to know what their policies would look like, since science is inherently related to every significant challenge we face.
What's the short list of things that lawmakers should know about science that, unfortunately, they are currently lacking?
Well, I think it's not necessarily about that. I think it's putting people in positions of influence in their offices. So I used to be a Senate staffer. I worked for Senator Bill Nelson from Florida. He's still there. State of Florida, moderate Democrat. I think a great person, the kind of person that I would like to see more of in office. I worked with some of the smartest people I've ever had the pleasure of working with when I was there. I left in 2006, so I think politics has changed quite a bit since then. But what I noticed early on was there were very few scientists in those staff positions at all, there to translate kind of the cutting edge, complex research into a relatable policy language for candidates. So I think there's a lot of talk now about, we know about the 314 PAC, the Political Action Committee, getting scientists to run for Congress. I think there's a place for that, but I also think at a time when there are fewer and fewer tenure track jobs available for people who are training to be scientists, we should really be showing what these viable, impactful careers in policy can look like, and maybe push some of them into those staff positions that are going to influence the people making decisions about our health and safety and security and standing as a global leader.
It occurs to me, and I don't have your experience, being there in Washington, but that congressional staffers must be getting a lot of scientific information, and you can put that in scare quotes if you want to, from lobbyists. Is that the case?
So I'll say this, and again, this was 12 years ago that I was there. But what I found I was working as a legislative assistant, so working as the person hearing about the science from groups that would come in. I might have 5 different groups come on a single day to talk to me about a science issue coming up in legislation. Very few of them were actual scientists working at universities, but they were often people with very fancy degrees, maybe in economics, but not climate economists, just people with degrees that gave them a doctor in front of their name. They were usually very articulate, very funny. At the time, they could leave us little gifts or things like that. I don't think that's still the case. And when scientists did make their way into my office, they didn't usually have a clear message. They didn't know what the take-home should be. They often talked about p-values or significance values in data, and sometimes they'd print PowerPoint slides. And so it's no wonder they had challenges connecting with staffers, because at the end of the day, staffers are bright. They need to tell their boss 3 things. They need to tell their boss, what's the issue, why does it matter, how does it affect our constituents, our state. And it wasn't the scientists that were making that case well. They don't have the power, they don't have the platform, and frankly, they don't have many of them don't have the communication skills to do that. But I feel like the climate of that is changing. I think more and more people going into the sciences see the interdisciplinary nature of how their work has impact beyond the lab. And so I've personally been involved in a lot of university training programs for scientists to incorporate communications into their degree, or policy, or journalism, and find new ways to tell their stories.
Do you think it's a matter strictly of training in communication, or is there a temperament aspect to scientists and communicating with non-scientists?
I think there's a lot of pieces to it, right? So I think we in the science community need to be more comfortable telling our stories, because when we don't do that, other people often do it for us and we don't like the result. Right. I think that there's a lot that the media and journalists can learn about how to ask questions, what's most important, why we don't have to have this sense of two sides when it comes to a lot of these science issues, so everything looks like there's a balanced 50-50 argument either way on issues like climate change. I also think we have to do more to get people with that kind of expertise in positions of influence. And again, not just as policymakers, but people working with those policymakers.
So climate change is an obvious place where scientific literacy and approaches to science are very relevant to politics, but I think it's also a place where so much well poisoning has already taken place that a lot of people are not open to talking about it. You're at least not open to examining the views of somebody they consider to be a political opponent. But are there other issues of science or scientific areas of policy importance that are not so charged, where there is the possibility of maybe doing some bridge building between factions?
I hope so. I think both. We often talk about Republicans having this war against science, or at least that's something I hear and see in book titles and things quite a bit. But I think both Republicans and Democrats have politicized science to suit a particular agenda. And because of that, while these issues impact every one of us, we kind of look at them as needing to feel tied to one opinion or the other based on our party affiliation. But like when we talk about caring for our loved ones with cancer, when we talk about the opioid epidemic, when we talk about preparing to combat the next superbug because of our overuse of antibiotics, these are very human stories. And ultimately, I think for the most part, 99.9% of us want to make the right choice to protect our family, our community, our friends, our loved ones, and we're coming from that place. But maybe we have to change the way that we talk about a lot of these issues to get there.
I agree. Well, Sheril Kirshenbaum, let me leave you with the opportunity to promote any organizations that you are here to represent.
Sure. Well, I'd encourage everyone to go to sciencedebate.org. You can click on this interactive map we have and see if the candidates running in your state before the midterms have responded to 10 questions from us on what their positions are before you vote. So Thomas Jefferson said that whenever the people are well informed, they can be trusted with their own government. I think that's how democracy works. So our idea is just to help us all be a little more informed. We are going to be very active toward the 2020 election, so watch for live science forums, hopefully in the Midwest next summer. We want to do some live events and get candidates really talking about these issues so we all know where they stand before we vote.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.